You guys have probably figured out by now, it wasn't a jazz festival that caused all the controversy. It was jazz basketball tickets. And as you guys probably figured out, I'm a Lakers fan. And I don't watch that much basketball because I didn't even know that Jazz was a basketball team. Is that bad? Anyway, when I was gossiping with my friends in Utah about what the hell was happening with Lisa's husband, I really thought the whole time they were talking about jazz tickets because it didn't even occur to me that like housewives go to basketball games and that would be like something so VIP that people would want to give a blowjob to go. It never occurred to me. Okay. I mean, like there's a jazz tickets, like a jazz festival, a really good one I could see. But a basketball game, like, I don't know. Giving blowies, as Heather says, for a basketball game seems a bit extreme, especially when it isn't the Lakers. Or the Celtics. I love the Celtics too, okay? Finally got to wear Meredith's jacket in Florida because it was very cold. It was like 60 degrees. I think it's maybe 59 degrees outside right now. So it is freezing. Yeah. I went hiking today a little bit. That was nice. I like crisp air when I hike. Is that weird? In this video, you guys, I'm going to take you on some mini deep dives, okay, of Jen Shah, of Whitney Rose, and of Lisa Barlows. So get ready, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Also, like, subscribe, and hit the notification button because if I don't ever get over 20,000 people, that's pretty pathetic, and I'm just gonna cry. And you don't want to see me cry because it's sad. So just hit the button instead of seeing me cry. I could do housewife style. I could do it. I could do those alligator tears, crocodile tears. Look how cute Jen Shah and Coach Shah are together in college. I mean, the cutest little Jen Shah picture ever? The innocence. See, this was when she was innocent before all the MLM people corrupted her in the different companies she worked for. If you don't know about that, you should watch the Shah Shocker or go on the Patreon because I believe that's what happened to poor Jen. She was sort of mentored by the wrong people in a very young age and then throughout her years, and I think that's what happened. But anyway, here's a little Jen, and this is how I choose to think of Jen, and I hope she, gets in jail real quick and does her time and makes the most of it and then comes out better than ever. In all seriousness, though, Jen Shah pleaded to a really serious crime. She pleaded to one count of wire fraud where she has to admit that she victimized a minimum of 10 people over the age of 55, which is considered elderly, which is kind of horrifying because that's like most of the housewives are elderly. But anyway, over the age of 55. And she has to admit that she did this through telemarketing by selling them services that she knew that they didn't need, they couldn't use, and didn't want. And maybe even she might have to admit that she didn't give them refunds when they asked for them and things like that. I don't know how deep this sort of confession she has to give the judge on sentencing day is going to go, but the judge has to decide if she believes her. One of the requirements when you do a plea deal is you're not allowed to lie to the judge. So the judge is going to have to look at her change in her guilty charges to her plea charge, right? Which was basically the big difference is it was money laundering versus just wire fraud. And she's going to have to believe that Jen Shah, although she said she was innocent 50 million times on television, truly believes and owns her guilt in her part in this crime. And if she doesn't, the judge can deny her the remedy of this plea deal. Yeah. Now, there's another deal that I found out recently. Casey from my show found out about it, which you don't have to admit guilt, but you can accept the plea deal without admitting guilt. Let me share this with you. I don't know, what the pros and cons to this Alford plea is, but I'd say it's a good option for some people if you're in a state or in a state that allows it or in a federal court. Okay, ready? In United States law, an Alford plea, also called a Kennedy plea in West Virginia, an Alford guilty plea and the Alford doctrine is a guilty plea in criminal court whereby a defendant in a criminal case does not admit to the criminal act and asserts innocence, but admits that the evidence presented by the prosecution would be likely to persuade a judge or jury to find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is maybe something Jen is going to do, and that's why she's comfortable saying, she's innocent 100 times before she is going in on her sentencing, because most people can't do that. It occurred to me that I had read the initial press release that the Justice Department released when they arrested Jen, but not the updated press release after she pleaded. So I wanted to read this. Reality show cast member pleads guilty to running a nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme. Damian Williams, United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, announced it earlier today. Jennifer Shah pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said Jennifer Shah was a key participant in a nationwide scheme that targeted elderly, vulnerable victims. Notice he says a key participant, because remember in this week's episode, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, episode 4, Heather and Lisa and Meredith and Whitney are all sitting around the fireplace trying to talk about Jen's mental health, and also, was she the head of the scheme or whatever? They're speculating about that around the fireplace. I thought you might be interested in this. Just so you guys know, I had read other related court documents to the case, and they were actually saying that Jen Shah was the mastermind of the overall scheme. Okay, so like the most guilty. In this press release, they seem to scale it back to key participant. So just something to know. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said Jennifer Shah was a key participant in a nationwide scheme that targeted elderly, vulnerable victims. These victims were sold false promises of financial security, but instead, Shah and her co-conspirators defrauded them out of their savings and left them with nothing to show for it. This office is committed to rooting out these schemes, whatever form they take. In apparently 2017, Shah began operating a Manhattan-based sales floor that sold downstream business opportunity products to victims on lead lists provided by the defendant as part of the business opportunity scheme, the Manhattan sales floor. Between 2018 and 2020, Shah controlled the day-to-day operation of the Manhattan sales floor. Among other things, Shah, with other participants, moved certain operations for the Manhattan sales floor to Kosovo to avoid law enforcement and regulatory scrutiny. The sales people at the Manhattan sales floor engaged in the same fraudulent sales practices as other telemarketing floors in the business opportunity scheme, namely lying to and misleading victims into purchasing business opportunity products to ostensibly advance their non-existing online business. Shah undertook significant efforts to conceal her role in the business opportunity scheme. For example, Shah, among other things, incorporated her business entities using third-party names and instructed other participants to do the same, used and directed others to use encrypted message applications to communicate with other participants, and made numerous cash withdrawals structured to avoid currency transaction reporting requirements. I mentioned Jen Shah getting fired, when she pled guilty by Bravo, but I wanted to read this to you. Andy says that Jen Shah wasn't at the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City panel at BravoCon because once she pled guilty, it was, quote, the end of the engagement there. And he hopes to do a sit down with her because he has lots of questions for her. I'm sure Andy has a load of questions because he was defending her for a long time. And so she obviously lied to him, and he relied on her saying that she was innocent. He's got elderly parents. He's not going to be up for this little shenanigans that she pulled. But I will say this, the shade assassin, he calls himself the shade assassin. Andy does, isn't a great judge of character. Let's hope he's not doing too much of the selecting on the castings. Do you think he is? Maybe I'm the true shade assassin. Would make sense, right? Did you know? Anyway, as I watch the show and I see all the girls crying for their friend Jen, who is probably going to prison for 8 years or 14 years. I think it's 8. Everybody else thinks it's 14. I think it's 8. And they're crying. I still can't cry because I think of this. My Nana, most people have a Nana or grandma. Anyway, my Nana was lucky because she had me and I took care of her till she was 103 years old, from 90 to 103. And I protected her. And I took care of her even in really difficult situations. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of elderly people that don't have anybody to protect them or take care of them. And so it leaves them very easily victimized, especially with modern technology. So I'm not crying for Jen. I hope you guys understand. And I don't give a shit about her friends crying for her. Now, let's move on to some more fun gossip. So I heard word on the street is that the producers are trying to get Mary Cosby to come back after her break in season 3. We'll see if they can pull it off. That's the word on the street. I don't want any of that Mary girl either. Cult leader Mary. No, I would really like, actually, how about like the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch? Doesn't he have a girlfriend or a wife or something? Now that I would be down for. Or like a mystic, a rich mystic. I'd be down for that. There's got to be some other people in Utah that we could watch. I mean, right? Should I do the casting for the show? I could do it in like 2 weeks. Now, here's a fun thing to do. Go watch episode 4 and the scene where Whitney's talking to her father's children from another marriage, her brother and her sister. I want you to look at the house they're sitting in. That is definitely not her brother's house. Take a look at that house. That house is as staged as Selling Sunset, okay? Like, it's hilarious. I was like, they didn't even make it, like, you could, like, Bravo couldn't go in and throw a few, like, cupcake wrappers around or, like, some groceries on the thing to make it at least look like somebody lived there. I mean, the house was, to me, obviously staged for sale. So you guys tell me what you think, but I'm not buying that that's her brother's house down the street. So sorry. Whitney in this episode is feeling abandoned, unheard, and abused. And we still don't know what this abuse is, but she's ready to let it go by the end of this episode. She doesn't tell us what it is. It seems to be maybe that this is all I can gather, because because it's so cryptic. But what I'm guessing is that she's alluding to the fact that her father that we met in season 1 that she tried to help may have used drugs around her and somehow abused her in the sense of maybe locked her in a bathroom while he was doing drugs, or didn't give her attention, maybe didn't feed her, I don't know, something like that. That is what I think the abuse is she's describing from her cryptic messages, and it would make sense for his addiction. So I was just looking into Steve Lesh, who's Whitney's dad, because I think it's only fair, right? He's disappeared allegedly. She hasn't talked to him in over 2 years since he was on season 1, although his LinkedIn still shows that he lives in Provo, Utah. Now, what's really funny is as I was going through LinkedIn, it recommends people. Well, guess who got recommended to me? You're going to die. Gia Giudice. And guess what? She's studying to be a criminal justice person. She's going to become a criminal justice litigator. She's doing undergrad for criminal justice. Gia, you should tell everyone. Oh, I just did. Anyway, I'm proud of you. Go, go, go. See? You know what's crazy? I am literally holding so much New Jersey gossip for the season to start, but maybe you guys want me to spill it before then. So comment below if you do, and I'll do a video next week as one of my videos. Okay? This filter makes me look tired. Let's do this. The awesome Halloween filters are out, and I want to use some. Isn't it weird that we have no idea who Whitney's mom is? But she still seems to talk to her mom. But we don't ever get to meet her mom, or she doesn't ever speak to her on the phone or anything. Is that weird? What the heck? I'm so confused. I mean, from all accounts, Whitney said that her dad left at 16, when she was 16. And she's saying her abuse happened from 9 to 18. So maybe it has to do with her mom, the abuse? I am so confused. I mean, it would really help if we could have a little, like, more information. I'm leaving it like her after this episode because I can't follow this one. It's like cryptic. Like the parents are even cryptic. Steve and Whitney when she's little. Here's Steve with Whitney again at daddy-daughter date day. Here's Whitney Rose and Justin with her dad, Steve Lesh, in November of 2019, celebrating her 10-year anniversary because she married Jim in 2009. And this is taken in November of 2019. But she posts it in November 15 of 2020 on her Instagram because the show, I guess, came out at this time. So she could show the photos finally. Anyway, that's her and her dad. So then 9 months later, her dad, Steve, goes missing. Allegedly, she never hears from him ever again. And that's it for him. But she does have a mom. I think this is her mom, Jolene Leish. I'm not positive, but I think so. She's in most of the pictures with Whitney's children at this vow renewal. And although Bravo calls her mom anonymous, not so much on her Instagram. It's very mysterious. Jolene lives in Utah, but nothing on her Instagram except for one post from 2018 with a bunch of neighbors or something. It's weird. Not one picture of grandchildren but yet she does have a relationship with Whitney. Huh. So she dropped this the other day. I haven't spoke to my father for 2 years, Whitney shared on September 21st episode of Two Teas in a Pod. I'd kicked him out of my house because he wasn't holding up his side of the deal, and I had to learn to hold a boundary with him for his benefit and to protect my children too and myself. According to Whitney, Steve moved in with a former plastic surgeon who she suspects may have been giving him pills. And while the doctor has since died due to COVID, Whitney has heard Steve is still living at the home and doing well. I hear from people around town, they're like, he looks good. He looks healthy. Huh? Oh my goodness. What? What is happening? Is Whitney losing her mind or something serious? Anyway, I'm just saying, Angie never said what she said. Whitney lied about that. I know Angie wouldn't say something like she's implying. So Heather, I believe, truly was sideswiped in this episode. I think she was in shock because she didn't expect Whitney to lie in the way that she did. And I think, like I said in the previous recap, Whitney was just hammered and then she was in too deep to turn back. Now, Whitney really turned on Heather hard because she used her abuse allegations to imply that Heather was lacking a sensitivity chip with Whitney. But I don't believe that at all watching the episode. I felt like, what is going on? Heather was trying, I think, to keep everybody focused on why they were there, which is a send-off for Jen, knowing she's going to jail and she's maybe dealing with some mental health issues that we're not seeing on camera. Because I think the women think that Jen is maybe a little bit suicidal. And so that is where this trip comes from. And that is not really said too much on the show. But I think that's why Heather was so like trying to keep everyone focused on Jen, and they don't show that part. And then you've got Whitney doing this whole abuse storyline, and it's so cryptic, no one even knows what the hell's happening, but somehow Whitney's creating all this drama by, bonding with Lisa, who was always her known enemy off camera in the girl group. Now she switch hits, and she's running around naked the whole time. It just was like gratuitous, I think, to her castmates. And I think that really rubbed Heather wrong. I don't believe there's any way she's coming back from this one with Heather. I think Heather meant what she said. They may pretend, but I'd say that's that on that friendship off camera. Better to know. Now Heather can go and, do her job, which is to be a good housewife and forget all this friendship crap, because that's not really there. It's impossible to keep your friendships on the show because you have to keep coming for your friends. I tell everybody your best thing to do is like say to people, listen, I loved you going on to the show, but we have to take a friendship time out till the end of the show. And then when it's over, we could be friends again. And I think if you set those kind of boundaries, you actually might be able to leave the show with your friendship intact. It was a good time to introduce you guys on YouTube to something we've known about in the Patreon for 2 years, which is the weird filings for Jack Henry Spirits, which is John and Lisa Barlows' company. They own a company called Ciudad Tequila with its different versions. And this was in an SEC filing. And as you can see, the numbers are super low. They actually were looking only to raise $100,000. This was back in 2015. But as you can see, we're talking about really small numbers, which is what Meredith is talking about. Also, I don't know if I've ever told you guys, but Lisa Barlow's house that we see from time to time in earlier seasons of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is actually her cousin's house, not her house, because she doesn't supposedly have that nice a house. There's another one from a different part of the SEC document. They're raising $107,000 for their tequila. It's just very small. And I guess we've been led to believe that they're just these huge entrepreneurs and all this stuff. And I just don't think it's the case. I think her job is the show. And then they have these little tiny companies that they're trying to make happen. I think she uses a lot of her friends and family to, look wealthy. And I guess I'm calling this out because of the Dior boots in last episode that she called out 800 times. The gaucho boots, okay? This is in honor of that. And also so you know what Meredith was talking about in episode 2, I think, about the rumors about Lisa Barlow's financial situation. Anyway, Whitney brings up calling Angie on this week's episode. Heather tosses Whitney aside. Did you see that toss? I was like, oh, hell no. I'm never going to piss off Heather Gay. Heather is like, how dare you call me a liar? Because Whitney's actually lying, which is why Heather seems so ballistic. Lisa's in the bedroom calling her husband. I'd say Lisa that whole time was doing damage control with her husband, because John Barlow, if he had watched this without a heads up that this all went down, it would be really damaging. I'm sure it was damaging in her marriage anyway. Honestly, the reason I think Lisa's really quiet for the rest of the episode is she's so beaten up from that gossip coming out on the show. She's just trying to survive the trip because she's probably told John and he's upset and she's got family drama over the show. And then she's just trying to hang on, and finish the group trip. And she's just beaten up because it is when stuff like that comes out on the show, your husband really gets upset because he doesn't want the world thinking or his children thinking that you're some sort of whore, even if he doesn't believe it. And I mean, and God forbid your husband think that you might be doing something and then this puts him over the edge, hearing someone say this. Because you don't always know on a reality show what's really happening in that relationship or marriage. So like, you know, they're showing this on the show, but what's happening at home is something completely different. Some men are really jealous too. They don't need a lot to go off, like, you know, so we don't know. So anyway, what else happens? Heather sleeps with milk duds. That was a highlight for me. There's always your milk duds you could cuddle at night. And then Whitney does this like really juvenile thing of ripping up their friendship sign or something, fair weathered friends or friends that are in the weather together. I don't know, something that was made up in another season. And they love it. And oh, bad weather friends. Okay, I'm struggling, but you know what I'm talking about. She rips that up, okay? The thing that I really thought was good is that they showed that Jen Shah talked about her Botox and that her lawyers wanted her to be able to show emotion when she testified in court. That sounded like a joke, but that is actually true. Attorneys do give advice like that because juries do go off appearance, which is why our Justice Department needs reform. Okay, we'll leave that there. We'll leave that one there. Jen leaves early, the girls' trip, and heads to New York, I guess, for her case. And Heather and Whitney continue to fight. I've already addressed the abuse stuff, so we'll skip that whole thing. But Heather and Whitney, just are fighting and fighting and fighting. They go to this weird place called Whiskey Row. Honestly, the women look wrecked by the time they get there. And, it's pretty clear they're all kind of drunk. And, Heather is just, again, Whitney's like saying, you're a bad friend, Heather. You should have been there for me. Because you're like abusing me now, and she's tapping this whole abuse storyline that now she's blaming Heather for. And Heather's like, what the hell are you even talking about? I'm just trying to stay focused on the goal here, which was Jen Shah's mental health. They give us a little hint of what I think the women are really struggling with, which again, I think Jen is telling them behind the camera that she's not doing great. And so we're not really getting to see that Jen on the show. But I think that is happening. And so the women are reacting from that perspective. And that's why they had that conversation around the fire about Jen's mental health and how she's dealing with everything and what could happen to her. And was she the big fish and all this stuff in the scheme. And so I do think that was like a really important conversation in this episode because it was like the only one that was kind of giving us insight into what the women behind the cameras are dealing with Jen versus just Jen like, I'm on camera and I better make the most of my last 20 minutes, A lot of gossip about Salt Lake City and I'm just trying to drop a little bit, as it comes up on the show. If you want me to continue to do Salt Lake City, watch them. And if the numbers, I'd say stay over 5,000 views, I'll keep doing them. If they slip below that, I won't bother and I will stop covering the franchise and move on to something else. Because then you're not that into it and you've lost interest in Salt Lake. What can I do? I can't make you love it. I can't make you watch it. But I will say I have a ton of tea to spill if you stick with it and get into it and make sure you watch and try to get your friends to watch because we need to get more people watching, obviously. All right, guys. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. You never know what you're going to get on my channel.